Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a good Monday. Just trying to go through all of this baseball stuff and then get some site stuff done. Not a whole lot changing since the earlier stuff. It's pretty straightforward. There's a few guys that were ruled out that I made some swaps on, but for those of you guys who have the premium product. I did update my early builds. We're going to be, like it's kind of it's a great slate. It's a big slate. I think that the ownership is going to be spread out fairly for a slate this size. And I'm sort of on the same teams as earlier. If you did watch the video, if not, I'd be happy to go through those again with you. We should have Sheets at any moment here, but every second that he's not exactly on time is more likely that he's not going to be here, because he usually shows up right on time. But we'll give him a few minutes to jump on in here. In the meantime, say what's up in the chat, guys. Please hit the like and subscribe if you don't already. And we'll get right to it. Sheets is off to a hot start with the MLB. I'm sort of off to a little bit of a slower start myself. I've had some decent runs in like the 121 in a couple lineups and a couple of the days, but didn't play over the weekend. So I'm ready to get back after it tonight and looking forward to attacking it. So with that said, I'll if Sheets isn't here, I'm going to, in the meantime, share my screen in just a minute. Let me just get the updated projections and we'll go over there. And remember, with baseball, everybody who wants Sheets projections, Goldie has the aggregate information from everybody in the industry, which should give you the most accurate sense of basically what everyone else thinks, not just in terms of what the player's projection is, but really more importantly, it's about the ownership. The other stuff for projections for baseball, while it matters for pitching somewhat, if Sheets is ever not here or anything, and almost everybody who's a subscriber to our site has the premium subscription, has the subscription to SaberSim, and even if not, Goldie gets his projections in there for all sports but NBA. So you really don't need, like, the last second is the fractional 0.001 of a fantasy point is not going to make the kind of difference you're going to be looking for if you're wanting to make money in baseball. You really should care less about that kind of thing. What you should care about is player ownership. That's the important thing. So with that said, let's talk through the slate a little bit. There are 4 teams that I'm focused on, and I'm going to share. Oh, it looks like Sheets is here. There he is. What's going on, man?
Just impossible day.
Yeah, it's one of those days. Yeah, I was trying to catch up with some other stuff too. But in terms of baseball, my actual stuff isn't a whole lot different than it was earlier today. I have basically the same teams, and there's a few players. A few of the catchers aren't playing today. No big deal. But it's a pretty similar to the early slate, and I'm still into the Boston, Atlanta, Houston, and Tampa Bay stacks as my favorites, and I'm getting to some Yankees and some Cleveland, with Seager and Austin Meadows as my favorite one-offs, just to go through that. And for pitching early in the year, I'm going to be much more spread out than I will later. I'm playing a ton of Michael Grove for the Dodgers, and I'm playing some Cutter Crawford and playing them together. I just don't think, I like Kirby. He's my favorite pitcher on the slate. I think he and Hunter Brown are both really, really solid options. And I think Cortez, if you're playing on FanDuel, and I think that you could go other ways, but I think Cortez and Morton would be my favorite over there. But I don't think we should be overly worried about spending up a pitcher early in the year. Neither Morton or Cortez has a particularly good matchup. And I just wanted to point that out, that I do think getting spread out a little bit more at pitcher makes a little bit of sense early in the year. What are your thoughts on that, Sheets? What are you doing today? What's going on with your builds?
I don't know. I'm looking now, honestly. And I still believe that today's a day that you don't want to play chalk pitchers, which unfortunately means that unfortunately, I'm probably going to be off of the Cortez Brown combination. Probably going to be off of both of them. I'd like the Michael Grove and Crawford that you just mentioned. I'd like those two, and then if I have to pay up a little bit more, I'll play Plesac at a little bit reduced ownership, and I'll play Detmers at a little bit reduced ownership. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't think I'm going to get to Morton after all that. I can't quite do the Kyle Bradish. The one I might be able to do Let me just see. I just want to make sure I just had this feeling that Singer's like really good. You know what I mean? Like that's the best. That's the best I can be. And I'm completely biased because he's made me a lot of money before.
Yeah, you're definitely completely biased, but and I think he's good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he like even if he's good, like the guys who he's priced around, he's definitely not better than. Like he might be. I mean, he's probably. You're still. Look, I'm playing some of him. I don't think he's that bad. I don't think he's necessarily a better pitcher than Rasmussen. He has more of a leash. He's certainly not better than Kirby is. He's not even in the same ballpark, I don't think, to where Kirby will be. Right. Maybe he is right now better. Cortez, I think that there's some similarities there, but Cortez is a higher upside. So I get it.
Okay.
I was just looking at like maybe differentiating with either going cheaper if we really don't think like, and that's what, on the small slates I really suggest doing, but even on the big slate, who are the guys who are going to kill you? Hunter Brown could have one of those 7 or 8 strikeouts, even in 4 innings. That's pretty reasonable. You would take it, but it's probably not killing you most of the time. I think Kirby, Cortez, and Detmers have the best chance to kill you if you don't play them. But even those guys, I don't feel overly worried about doing it. Detmers may be the most stretched out of anybody. Kirby, the official word is we are going to limit his innings on the year, and we have absolutely no restrictions on him to start the season. We've seen that before a little bit with Seattle. They've shut guys down towards the end of the year. So
as far as hitting goes, I was trying to see if the ownership was going to just do something, just coagulate a little bit more. I'm still getting Pittsburgh as one of the top stacks, but they're getting owned, so Houston, Boston, Pittsburgh, you're not getting a lot of a break, but I'll tell you, and even Tampa's starting to get owned too. We thought we were going to get a break with them also. Mm-hmm. What about
but not owned that much. Like none of these guys have more than a couple guys double digit owned that I'm looking at.
Well, let me throw one out there for you. Can you play any Kansas City?
Sure.
Yeah. There's no Perez in the lineup, which kind of sucks.
I'm not touching the righties in that game. I mean, yeah, you got, there is some wind coming in from left.
Oh God.
But it's only 8 miles an hour, but it's not ideal. I just don't find these guys maybe for your 150 or for the lottery and stuff, maybe you can play these stacks that, by the way, Kansas City, I don't have any lower owned than the other teams we talked about. So I don't think that you're getting any big break on ownership on these guys. A little bit, probably. I'm not buying the fact that the Braves have 0 players that are going to be double-digit owned. I just think that that's not going to happen. But, I mean, the oddest part is like the Braves is a contrarian stack. That seems crazy, right?
That's the kind of nuts, right?
Yeah. And it's hard for me with the Dodgers because there's 30-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left.
Is that confirmed?
It's the same thing. It's a little bit more cross-field now, which could make for one of those kind of crazy games where there's all the balls flying around everywhere. But I don't remember ever seeing a Dodger game that had 30 miles an hour of wind, like as the average. You know what I mean? Like not even gusts. That looks like the actual stuff. So I'm going to throw in one Dodger stack because the matchup is really good, but I don't feel like it's going to be lefty heavy. It's going to be really hard to get the ball up to.
What have they been saying about this Dodger pitcher?
Grove?
Yeah.
He's good. I think everybody thinks like you're optimistic because everybody's optimistic because every Dodger pitcher, basically turns out to be really good. But he is a prospect. He is a high level guy. But I don't feel like it's not like the same thing as like when Walker Buehler came up or, things like that, where he's just, he's going to be a stud. But I think he's good enough. And I don't think that, there's a whole lot to, it's speculation purely on how much he's limited. Like, would it surprise me if he throws 65 pitches? No, but it really wouldn't surprise me if any of these guys threw 65 pitches.
Right.
So that's why I'm just sort of disregarding some of the ownership a little bit. The top prospect is Hunter Brown may end up being the best pitcher by far on this slate, and he's pitching against Detroit. So actually 30% ownership doesn't even seem that bad. You can walk your way into a game with Detroit like anytime. They just don't hit, which means I can't wait to stack them when we get a really bad guy out there. This is probably isn't the right slate for me to do it. Anyway, but yeah, I just think like going off the board, well, it makes sense. I'm looking even at your ownership at Goldie's at everybody's, and I'm just not seeing anybody own to a point where I'm going, okay, well, I don't want to play these guys because they're too high owned for me.
Yeah,
I actually have less of Pittsburgh than I do of the Red Sox, because Pittsburgh is getting more ownership than the Red Sox by a little bit. But I mean, you look at the highest owned players in the slate, the highest owned that we've got here that Goldie's got is 19%. The highest guy you've got is 23%, a couple guys in the 20s. And the highest that Saberson has is 16%. So it's just nobody is off limits for me when we're talking about those kind of ownerships. Now, would I play a whole team that was over 10%? No. But I will play teams where one or two players is 10%. And there's no reason you can't get different with differentiating at the bottom of the lineup. So I'm just going to play the stacks that I like today for that reason and stay away from some of the bad weather spots. Pretty straightforward, I think.
that sounds good to me. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and Bongo Fiesta, BBF here, saying that he likes Cleveland and especially Ramirez, Quana, Oscar Gonzalez. I'm with you, man. Like that's my fifth team that I'm using more pieces of than I am full stack. But I have no problem with that stack. That makes perfect sense to me. I actually think
for Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore. That is again, I'm looking at Baltimore's ownership. I don't see us really being any different. I mean, it's really Rushman Mullins are going to be popular. Rushman Mullins and Gunnar Henderson will probably be owned basically every day by like somewhere near double digits, just basically regardless of anything. And then I don't really. Do you want to spend all the way up for those other guys? Maybe. One thing that's interesting is that as Baltimore became a tougher hitter's park, the lineup got better and better. So it's kind of interesting to see how they do on the road this year. They've got a very, very strong, I like their lineup a lot, but top to bottom.
You have any John Gray?
I actually don't. I have some respect for Baltimore. Now, of course, there's upside. These guys all have strikeout risk. John Gray's not getting a ton of ownership. I just think that, if you take all the pitchers in that range, I think I would rather play Barrios. I think I'd rather play your guy, Singer. And I think I would rather play at a cheaper price, Rasmussen. Probably worth noting that Matt Boyd has been the best pitcher of all time in spring training, just in terms of strikeouts. I'm not going to mess around and play him much, but I am going to throw Matt Boyd into a GPP lineup, a couple of big ones, just because not big buy-ins, but just big fields. I just think that the 7,200, he probably has as good a strikeout stuff as anybody on this slate. He's just at high risk against Houston. But I'm telling you, if you look at Houston's team that as currently constructed, their 1 through 5 has got some good bats. But you've also got two lefties in there against the lefty, and you've got a weak bottom of the order, a really weak bottom of the order. So just something to consider for maybe some get weird GPP stuff. I'm going to read through. Eric's written a lot. The more you write, the harder it's going to be for me to catch up, but I'll try. What's up to Eric and to K9? Carter Crawford on FanDuel. I'm not as on board. Everything I said about these pitchers, I'm definitely not as on board with doing it on FanDuel as I am on FanDuel. I think play the guys who you think can go out there and put up any kind of a number, even if it feels like a little thin. I'm going to still always aim on FanDuel for a quality start / win. It's just that 10-point bonus makes all the difference between, for those two things combined. But so I would be heavier on Cortez. I'm going to be heavier on Cortez, Cortez, Morton, then maybe even Kirby actually after that. Hunter Brown even is in play at 91. Just guys, I'm just looking. I need to try to find the ceiling guys. Even if I don't think anybody's most likely to do it, I just don't think you're gaining that much by saving even 4K. You could put together great lineups on FanDuel, even if you had to spend 12K on a pitcher today. It doesn't really matter as much to me on FanDuel. And saving is something I only like to do on pitchers when I think they have upside. I guess Plesac would be the one, another one you could consider at 7,400. His price is so cheap, and he'll have, he's facing Oakland, so I guess that's the other guy I'm looking at more on FanDuel than DraftKings.
Yeah.
Rich B, I completely hate these terms, and it's just so it's so what everybody does. And when we just
somebody telling you to lock something,
he just said Barrios sucks. That's what we get all the time. I just don't. I don't buy into the way that other people talk about sports, like so and so sucks and this sucks. Why does he suck? What we're saying he sucks for what reason exactly? Somebody explain it to me. Because he struggled in a couple of late season.
Well, let's talk about it another way. So I want to go back to when I first started playing DFS or whatever. These are the questions that I would ask Bobby regarding all DFS, but specifically with baseball. When you have a weak pitcher against a weak hitting team, does that mean that the weak pitcher is a good play because this is a good matchup for him, better than he usually is, even though he might not be that great against this particular team? He probably is a good play. Or is this the time to play the weak hitting team because they're up against a weak pitcher? And I bring it up because there's no answer, but just to illustrate the point that all of these concepts are relative. You know what I mean? Like the fact that Barrios stinks, in other words, like he's probably not a great number one starter in the World Series against the Yankees. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that you can't play him on a slate with terrible, with kind of fishy pitching options at low ownership. So that's why the term stinks doesn't really mean anything because we're not talking about a person's tradability for his career. We're not talking about how much you want to invest in his baseball cards. We're just talking about one game. You know what I mean? Like on this slate in this context.
Yep. And that's true. And I just want to point out though that really it's important to realize who pitchers are facing before we start talking about how they're bad. It's not a coincidence that Barrios had a much higher ERA and allowed more home runs and everything last year than he did. He has to face literally half of his games that he pitches are against the Yankees, Orioles, and Red Sox. That's no picnic for anybody. So we got to sort of manage expectations. Out of division, Barrios was very good. And guess what? Tonight's game, now I've lost my Barrios spot. Tonight's game is out of division with 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left center. Are they going to steal a couple bases off them? For sure. Can you use these guys? Yeah, I just don't think that. I'm just not that interested in the Royals stack as much as the other ones. And it's always really hard for me to stack when I see wind blowing in and cold temperatures early in the season. And I think that's never really done me wrong. I like what BBF is saying here, the bottom of Baltimore's lineup. I think that makes perfect sense. So the Matt Boyd has faced what's his name a lot, and I do have a ton of. We're getting the BVP stuff going here. Matt Boyd has pitched, a pretty good amount against the White Sox, and he's definitely given up. I don't have. Let me grab the numbers so I have the actual BVP. But Boyd does get hit by Abreu, but these aren't even like these are bad numbers. Okay, so for a hitter, it's not ideal to have a hitter who's got 2 home runs and 36 at bats off of anybody. That's not a high number. He's 14 for 36 with 3 extra base hits. 3 extra base hits in 36 at bats is not enough to be a good BVP. That's not a good BVP. That's a good BVP for batting average. It's not good for tournaments, for GPPs. But I do have some of them because I'm playing some Astro stacks. And I think the Detroit bullpen is going to be one of the worst in the league this year, maybe the worst. So I just wouldn't take the 14 for 36. Who was Cabrera had? Miguel Cabrera, there was somebody who was 35 off of 75 off of, but he had hit 1 home run. And I'm just going, well, that's a huge sample. I just look at the 1 home run. That tilts me away from him. 1 home run and 1 double. If he's going to hit a bunch of singles, I'm not gonna be using a first baseman who I want to hit a bunch of singles. Anyway, do I like the Diamondbacks on FanDuel? No. I don't like the Diamondbacks any. I mean, look, if you guys want to play with 30-mile-an-hour winds blowing against you, go ahead. If this game was in Wrigley, no one would even be thinking about this game. But because it's in LA and we never get this kind of situation, people are still thinking about playing it. I like the under in that game. I bet the under in that game. Both pitchers suck, or not suck. Both pitchers are extremely vulnerable. But I just am not buying into taking hitters and when the wind's blowing that hard, 30 miles an hour in, even though it could end up more cross field, which still is not all that exciting to me. This is a good question from MC Sheets. Maybe you could help me with this one.
What's the question?
How do you decide on single entry 3 max lineups on FanDuel in these large slates? So like single entry versus large field versus 3 max for me, I'm much more willing to eat chalk, especially for pitchers in general, but also especially in the single entry. I don't mind taking stacks of teams that are more popular in single entry. But honestly, I play fairly similarly in baseball just because the variance is so high that I don't think like playing a guy at 1% versus 2% is not like a big different. I don't know. It's just I prefer to stick with my favorite stacks, and usually I put my favorite ones in the larger buy-ins. But when it comes to single entry, I'm willing to eat and 3 and 4 entry max. I'm willing to eat a little bit more chalk. That's really the main.
I'll tell you what I do differently. So, and this is glad you asked both of us because when I play MME, like I almost always 5-man stack. I mean, it's going to take like a really, really bizarre slate for me to not 5-man stack. But as opposed to Bobby, was much more inclined to not necessarily do that, right? But when it comes to when I'm doing like single entry and stuff, I'll be much less inclined to 5-man stack. I'll be more amenable to playing 3s and 4s and stuff like that. So that's the main difference in the way I play 3 max versus and single entry versus enemy.
Yeah. And I like, as much as it's important to say 5-man stacks for DraftKings, it's much more important to play 4-man stacks on FanDuel.
Explain that again.
You get more points for runs and RBIs than you do on DraftKings. Just very simple.
The point being the correlation is that much more.
Correlation makes a bigger difference over on FanDuel than it does on DraftKings. But no, I don't believe everything has to be 4-4 or 5-3. I think that's what Eric's asking right now. No, I'm not. I am playing 5-man stacks. I have 0 4-4 stacks, and I think I have 1 5-3 stack. I've got a lot of 5-2-1s, 5-1-1-1s, which I'm totally fine with. I did try to get in the 4-4 with Pittsburgh and Boston, but I just couldn't make myself like it enough. Maybe I will end up with one. I do have to finish my builds in about 8 minutes, so I'm going to do my normal 6:30 Eastern thing.
Yeah, as will I.
Yeah, Eric, you were always told that, but does that make it right? Because people say something, does that make it right? And people go, well, look at the winners have it. I'm like, well, 90% of the people are doing it, so the winners are going to have it. You know what I mean? It's like when the winner has like a guy who has like a 3x score in basketball, and they're like, oh yeah, but he was on the winning lineup. I'm like, well, he was 94% owned. I mean, it's pretty hard for him not to be on the winning lineup. You have to find that 6% to somehow outdo the 94% they're going up against. But no, I just don't buy it. I don't buy into these rules that are totally fictitious that people just made up. There's absolutely no proof that you have to 5-3 or 4-4 and everything has to be a stack. There's just absolutely no proof. I've won so many tournaments where I won 100K one night where my stack got shut out. My 4-man stack, because it was a 4-man stack that got shut out. I had 2 2s on the other side, and I had 2 of those guys that hit multiple home runs, and they were both like 1% owned. And it offers you a lot of difference, and especially if you're not max entering, if you're not entering the same amount as the guys at the top, I do think you're getting yourself into trouble by just following these blind rules, and it forces you to just have to go out and play teams that don't hit, because that's the only way to get different. Although tonight I like the 5-man stacks because I'm not so high on the pitching, and I see some spots where I think teams might erupt.
You could also say that if you are, again, I haven't done all the work on it, but if you're going to play MME and like and fighting all the parentheses people, right? Fighting all the 150 maxers. If you play 5-man stacks and play like 15, 20 lineups, I mean, you know how perfect you have to, you know what I mean? Like you're fighting all the people that script like all 5-man stacks. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to beat that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to get different, if you want to have a chance to beat like the 150 maxers, you're probably better off, like as Bobby's saying, to differentiate by construction. And look, it's the math of it is that it's definitely better to have correlation than not. But if the whole field is going to be on, say, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from somebody playing in Coors, you know what I mean? Like, then that particular 5-man stack is something you just shouldn't be playing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Even though the correlation that is better than, a two-man from Colorado, you know what I mean, or something else, it does really depend on the context of the slate and where the ownership is going to go, So yeah, mathematically, sure, it's better to have correlation than not, but it's not just about picking the best, you know what I mean, the best score. It's about picking the best leverage also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Anybody have any questions or thoughts other than Eric? Not that I have any problem with Eric, just that he's asked everyone so far. And he still hasn't, still not a premium subscriber, like the one guy who we can't just dedicate all of our time to the one guy who's not a premium subscriber who we actually is in our Discord. How the Padres not chalk? They've got 22-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left field with a bunch of righties in their lineup. So there's your answer. Are you subbed? I don't think. Are you really? Then join the premium channel. Jump on in and start some conversation. Awesome. Well, that's thrilling to me, Eric. Well, then ask anything you want. I'm in on it now. Let's talk, Eric. I would love to talk to you about this stuff. And then make sure you're in the premium chat channel, though. I want these questions and thought-provoking stuff. Talking to everybody. Eric's a knowledgeable guy. He's been doing this forever. Jump on in. Oh, he's in the Discord. Okay. Well, let's keep it firing all night because I like the fact that Eric just goes extremely contrarian on everything. And I always give him a hard time for it. But, we've been going back for a number of years since I was at RG. But I do think it's great to have people like this, the very, very contrarian mind, which is what is very, very important for baseball DFS. I like the BBF idea about the Rasmussen. What have I got him 25% right now? I might end up with a little bit more. Yeah, that's great. I know. I'm dissing. This is like a playful diss. Like you go so crazy with the contrarian that it's going to work out for you sometimes in baseball because that's baseball. Probably works well for you in golf. I don't know about your golf stats, but I'm guessing you probably do okay every now and then because the chalky stuff in golf. I sort of have a similar feeling to as I do in baseball sometimes, although it's a little bit more makes a little more sense. Yeah, I don't play cash either anymore in baseball. I just don't see the reason for it. Personally, but that's just me. All right, do it, Eric. I support Oakland more than I do of any of the other things. I actually think that Oakland is a sneaky. First of all, they're super cheap. They've got some guys who are going to run between Kemp. Seth Brown can run a little bit. I don't know much about Capel, but I think he can too. So can Laureano. I'm on board with the Oakland stack on FanDuel for sure. All right, about 3 more minutes, and then I got to go actually finish, whittling down, as we say. And when I whittle down in baseball, I do it very differently than basketball. I'm not trying to make sure I have a certain amount of exposures. I'm trying to restack my stacks and then restack my stacks with different players from the same stack, and then I want to get different pitching exposures with one side of the stack that I have on the other. You know what I mean? Like if I've got Rasmussen and Singer in one, well, then I want to play a Kirby Brown with a similar stack, but changing 1 or 2 of the guys in the stack. Caprillion is not the one I'm pitching against them. It's he's pitching against Cleveland, by the way. So I don't understand how to answer. I saw you asked one earlier, Eric. How much do you late swap in baseball? I'll tell you what, I late swap every time there's a huge buy-in tournament, or if I'm doing really well and I see another way to pivot that I think makes sense, that a play I like better, that's maybe a little more chalky, 2% guys hit or something like that early in the games. But I do it all the time. I don't look to build the same way. It's not as important as it is in NBA, but there is some value to really playing your lineups all the way through and making some late swaps. Yeah. So it really depends. There's not a general thing, but I'm always ready to late swap. I just I sort of need a clear angle. But every time we get a 2,500 buy-in or 1,500 buy-in, I notice that I do a lot more of it because I just don't think anyone else does that. Yeah, when a new lineup comes out, I have to swap because that means I'm not playing. I'm probably playing the guys who aren't playing. So I swap those guys, but I don't necessarily. If a lineup comes out and I really don't like it, I will swap it occasionally to another stack, but you'd have to have 2 studs out of the lineup for that really to happen, probably. So yeah, that's happened with the Angels with me, and then you see an ugly Angels lineup come out, and you switch over to maybe a chalkier Dodger team if your other lineups, if your early builds are going well. but it really it's so dependent on every slate. It really does change. I know Sheets doesn't do basically any, but I'm just gonna guess, right?
No, I mean, if I'm around and I'm noticing, you know what I mean, I'll do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, let's say like you have like one of the Seattle young guys in the later games, but that night we have like, I don't know, let's say I'm trying to think of a reliable pitcher for the Padres and having a little trouble on who's reliable these days. But like, let's say you had Blake Snell who was going to be chalky and you didn't want to play him, so you were playing, I don't know, let's say he was healthy Walker Buehler, just for argument's sake. Yeah, I'd be more likely to switch over to Buehler if I was on fire with my early builds and I didn't use too much shot. It really depends on ownership. It's really just so hard to answer like a general question like that. But
the thing that's kind of weird about baseball is that, like, in basketball you could be dead. You know what I mean? Like, if you have like the late game stacked in basketball, like, you could be dead. Like, you would know. Sometimes you're like, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm gonna lose. Like, baseball's a funny game. You know what I mean? Like if you got the late stack in baseball, like in your 5-man stack the Dodgers, I mean, there's like literally, like, not literally, but there's like no limit to what you can score. You know, so
right.
But in a weird way, sometimes you talk yourself into keeping stuff because you feel as though that there's unlimited possibilities where maybe you should do something different.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It really is slate dependent. It's a very good question, but a very tricky one to answer. But I don't think it could ever be a bad habit. Like, I don't think you say it's I don't think it could be a bad habit. Not if you're making like logical swaps.
Wait, to do what? A bad habit to do what?
He says he's got a bad habit of late swapping, but I just don't think it can really be that bad of a habit.
No,
I don't think it ever really hurts you. Like, unless you're like late swapping off of a 4-man or 5-man stack to a bunch of one-offs, and even that could work in baseball. That's how ridiculous this game is. But that's the wrong thing to do. But I don't think that's what you do. I'm guessing you switch over to different stacks or different players in the stack. That I'll do sometimes and leave more money on the table. There was one time I really regretted it because I saw that I was in 4th place and there was only one guy in the top 100 who had any time left. And we both had one player remaining, and he had exactly enough money to afford Trout, and I had Trout in my lineup. And I thought about swapping over, and I was kind of, whether this was right or wrong, I thought about swapping over, leaving 2K on the table to play Rendon that night. And I could have done it. It was a utility thing on FanDuel. And I decided not to. The weird part is that he decided to do it, and Anthony Rendon hit 2 home runs and won the slate for him. But I only would have tied with him I would have only come in second anyway. But it would have been nice to have gotten that game. He did the right thing. I didn't. So he was rewarded and I wasn't, which was
right.
I think sharp. All right. I'm going to get out of here in just a minute because I need to go build I have to build the rest of these lineups and just get my whittling done. Sheets, do you have anything else, or should I leave you on here?
No, but you know what? Just for funsies, I'll tell everybody what my
okay, I'm gonna leave you on.
What my exposures are. As far as hitting goes, my top owned stack is Tampa, and then actually the second highest owned is coming in. 3 teams tied for the second, so it's basically four teams that are kind of close: Tampa, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Boston. Those are the 4 main hitting stacks. And as far as the pitching goes, my top owned pitchers are actually Plesac and Detmers, followed by Crawford and Singer. So what could go wrong? I have a grand total of 0 Morton, a grand total of 0 Cortez. So listen, someone's got to win. If it's not going to be everybody else, maybe it'll be me. How about that? I guess that was it. Good luck, everybody.